Best Available Podcast, episode 31, our first episode of March. We are already 3 months into the 2021 year, which means we're closing in on March Madness, closing in on spring, closing in on a lot of fun stuff that we can look forward to. I'm here with my co-host, Matt. We have a lot of fun stuff to talk about today. We have an NFL segment. Of course, we're going to focus on college hoops with conference tournaments underway already. Some more to start in the coming days. And, of course, Selection Sunday coming up in just 13 days, less than 2 weeks. We're going to talk about some other things as well, so stay tuned throughout the entire episode. Now, we do have a big announcement, but I'm going to wait on that. I'm going to make y'all wait and listen to the entire episode to find out. Matt, how are you feeling now that we're in month number 3 of 2021?
Well, anyone who knows me knows that March is one of my favorite months of the year, obviously because of my love for college basketball and my love for warm weather and longer days, as we touched on last week. Obviously, we're all, anyone who has a Twitter account is going to see March from last year. You're going to go on your timeline in about a week, maybe 10 days, and you're going to see, well, this time last year, the world stopped. But wait. There's a light at the end of the tunnel, ladies and gentlemen. Warm weather's coming. We got March Madness this year. We're starting to turn the corner a little bit. So be positive when you see all the crazy stuff on Twitter next week, because it'll bring back a lot of memories. But Ryan, I'm happy that we got March this year. Because what I always say about March, most people have this opinion about April, and I'll kind of bridge the two. These next 2 months, you kind of start to get out of your house more. It's not dark 24/7 outside, right? You start to get a little more daylight. You get into like the 50s and 60s in our part of the country. You get all kinds of sports going on. You get an NFL draft going on. You got spring training, March Madness, the NBA, the NHL, all kinds of stuff, right? You got soccer, both men's and women's starting to get going in terms of domestic leagues. Everything's going on. It's a crazy time, so I'm excited. That was a long-winded answer, Ryan, but we got rid of the worst 2 months of the year out of the way, January and February.
Yeah,
no offense to your birthday month. No offense to your birthday month.
No offense taken. This is kind of when things start to turn around, and especially, as you said last week, when daylight savings time comes around, the days get a little longer, the sun stays out longer. It seems like you have more time to do things throughout the day. The temperatures become a little warmer. We had that one nice day last week that got close to the 60s, and now I was looking at the forecast. We're supposed to have 4 days in the 60s next week. So everything's kind of starting to get a little better. You brought up the light at the end of the tunnel. You look at the charts. The line is starting to go down again, which is good. The number of people getting vaccinated is slowly rising. There's reasons to be optimistic, and for that we are very grateful, and hopefully we can continue to bring everyone more good news as the months progress. Unfortunately, we do have some bad news, and that is that Matt, unfortunately, needs a new chair. So talk us through this. Of course, you're sitting in a chair for a lot of the day. When did you realize this?
Well, I got this chair senior year of college. When I got my little desk set up, I realized that I can't do work off of a bed because I just fell asleep all the time. I don't know how people do that, by the way. I'm impressed for anyone that could do homework like in their bed. But in any case, I would only sit in it for like an hour or two at a time. And the most we ever did it was when we would be on doing podcasts or stuff like that. But sitting in it for 8 hours a day, and your neck's not slightly bending down, looking at like a laptop, got no lumbar support. I need a new chair. The chairs in the office are a lot more comfortable. Got a little bit more lower back support. You told me not to get a gaming chair because I thought it would be nice to lean up fully back. You said the neck pillow works just fine for that. I don't know. So if anyone's got any good chair suggestions, let me know.
A neck pillow, a good neck pillow is a lifesaver, I can say firsthand. I did say not to get a gaming chair. They're overrated and overpriced. I always recommend just a nice solid office chair with good lumbar support, that's the way to go. That's where you're going to get the most bang for your buck and the most quality and the most performance. But are you heeding Toby's advice from the office and getting up every 10 minutes or so each hour to get some exercise?
The only exercise I get is when I need to refill my water.
All right.
Usually my exercise is leaning back in the chair and then scrolling through Twitter for like 2 minutes, or getting up for a bathroom break. But yeah, it's hard to just, because when you get up and walk away for 10 minutes, then like your computer will go into like sleep mode, then you got to log back into everything, and it's just like a hassle. So try to not deviate too much from the workstation.
Well, it's your lucky day. We're going to set up a GoFundMe for your new office chair, so be sure we're going to leave a link, gofundme.com/Matt's office chair, and we'll see if we can get you a new chair. So that was the big announcement that we were going to make. I hope you're excited.
I want people's money to go to like things that actually matter. I can afford a new office chair. Take that money, donate it somewhere. That money's more deserved there instead of me moaning about a bad chair. So take that money. If you ever thought to send me money for a chair, instead donate it somewhere, and then I personally will thank you.
Well, the more important things Matt is referencing is the best available player Patreon. Oh, yeah. Best available player. So if you really would like to... Of course, I'm half joking. There are a lot of important things in this world, but if you would like to donate to our Patreon, just go to our website. It's right on the About page. So just go to bestableplayer.com, click on About, and you can see a link to our Patreon page. You can donate whatever you want. We have some tiers, but you can donate whatever you want, and it'll help us be able to pay our staff and make improvements to the site and build this thing up. So if you have any spare money, we would greatly appreciate any donations that you can afford. But yeah, we have a lot of fun stuff to talk about today, Matt. I mean, the chair conversation was fun, but we're not an office chair podcast. We are a sports and entertainment podcast. So let's get into some stuff here. We're going to start with the NFL. Big news coming out today in the National Football League. J.J. Watt, per him, he broke the news, signed with the Arizona Cardinals, 2 years, $31 million, 23 of which is guaranteed. Now, we talked about, I guess, a couple weeks ago what JJ's role would be on a contending team. So I don't want to get into that. I will say that he will be lining up opposite Chandler Jones. So that in and of itself is a pretty lethal edge rushing duo. It's probably in the top duos in the NFL. I know JJ's not really the guy he used to be. But Matt, I think if you're a Cardinals fan, I know you have other needs, but to bring in a guy like JJ, who obviously is hungry to compete, not only to make the playoffs, but also to win a ring. This is a guy you want to have in your locker room this year and going forward. I think he's going to bring a lot to that organization.
No, absolutely. I mean, we said this when the news broke that he was leaving Houston, that whoever was going to get him is going to get someone who's just as good off the field as he is on the field. We talked about what he did in Houston for the community, and just a good clubhouse guy, as you said, locker room guy. Listen, he's going into one of, if not the toughest divisions in football. And I think he wanted that competition too. I mean, let's face it, playing teams like the Seahawks and the Rams and the 49ers is a big step up over playing the Jaguars twice a year and playing the Titans and the Colts. No disrespect to those teams, but this is clearly a step up. And I think that's part of the reason why he wanted to go there. Not to mention, I mean, if anyone... The biggest recruiting tool that Cliff Kingsbury has, Ryan, was his house that they showed on draft night. That right there is a big recruiting tool in itself. I want to talk about him at some point too, before we move on from this conversation. But it's a win-win for everybody, this situation. J.J. Watt, and you bring up Chandler Jones, a guy who I know well from his New England days, not personally, of course, but he's elite, right? He was hurt for a lot of last year, and he's one of the best, quietly, mind you, quietly one of the best, rushers getting to the quarterback and putting pressure on an offensive line. He's one of the best in the NFL, and he's done that quietly for so many years because of where he plays. So it's going to be scary. It's going to be a really scary defense.
Well, you said you wanted to talk about Cliff at some point. So let's do it now. Why not? Because it's interesting because JJ did say he wanted to play for a contending team and try to have a good chance of winning a ring. You look at Arizona, and especially what they did last year, you probably wouldn't say that they're one of the main contenders in the National Football League right now. And I think a lot of that, in my opinion, falls on Cliff. I said it in our podcast back in December and January. I would have moved on from the guy after this season. Some people disagree. Clearly, the Cardinals disagree. But, Matt, the roster has holes at some positions. I think the interior defensive line could use an upgrade. The offensive line could use an upgrade. So really the trenches in general. But how much of this do you think is on Cliff versus how much of it is on the roster construction? Like, how quickly do you think this team can be a contender? Is it just Cliff fixing his issues, or is it going to be a little more deeper than that?
I mean, I think it takes a full collection of components from coaching to construction. It just shows why you say it's the not for long league, right? This is a team that lost 6 of their last 9 games after they had that hot start, and you were kind of like tooting your own horn. You're like, oh, I was right about Arizona, and then they kind of just fell off the face of the earth. And it was a combination of just being one of the most penalized teams in the NFL, like the lack of discipline in terms of that regard. Their offense was kind of spotty at times. I mean, their last 2 games, they combined for 19 points. So they're like tier 2 like tier 2, tier 3, depending on how big your tiers are. You know what I'm trying to say, right? In terms of contenders. Like, they're like next man up, but they're not right there. If he would have chose Green Bay, I'll even throw Pittsburgh into that category, even though that's a compliment to them. I don't know. I was a little surprised by it, but at the same time, it's still 100% a step up from his current situation. But Kingsbury, listen, you're not a big Kingsbury guy. I'm kind of losing my faith in him as well. I get the Kyler Murray connection 100%, but I'm pretty sure he had a losing record with Patrick Mahomes at Texas Tech. I could be wrong with that, but the guy just, I don't know. He can't seem to put it all together when it matters. So, I don't know. I don't know if he's the guy.
Well, now the problem you've run into, Matt, is that let's say it doesn't work this year, and I hope that's not the case because I like Kyler, I like the Cardinals organization. I think they have the potential to be really fun and really good for the league. But let's say it doesn't work again, and then Cliff clearly has not learned from the past. He hasn't adapted. He hasn't changed some of the things that he does. So let's say he gets fired after 2021. Well, now in Kyler Murray's 4th year, you're bringing in a new head coach who's going to bring in his own staff. So that in and of itself, when a quarterback has to deal with a brand new coaching staff, especially one as young as Kyler, there's usually an adjustment period there. So you're almost saying that year 4 is going to be a wash too. And that would be the final year of JJ's deal. That's why this wasn't meant to be a Cardinals segment, but that's why my argument would have been to just fire Cliff this year. I know I always say, you think the grass is always greener on the other side until it isn't, but I really think they could have found a better guy to come in this offseason, just fix the issues that need to be fixed, and help that team make the jump in that tier. I really think that would have been beneficial long term.
I mean, I get they had some injuries throughout the offensive side of the ball, and even defensively, as we talked about with Chandler Jones, but I think they failed to capitalize on situations when they should have, right? You lost to, in hindsight, a bad Patriots team on the road, right? You lose to a 49ers team that was so depleted at the end of the year. You get swept by the Rams, which is tier 1 now with the Matt Stafford trade, right? At least in this division. Because I think Seattle's going to take a drop off. We'll probably talk about them too. But I think that I thought their season would change when they had the Hail Mary to DeAndre Hopkins. And then after that, I'm looking at the schedule, Ryan. They lost 5 out of 7 after that game. I think we went on this podcast and said, well, this could be the turning point, right? I mean, this could be the launching step to put them into the front tier, but yeah, you're right about Kingsbury. If you fire him after this year, it puts them in a really bad spot. So I guess next year. So Yeah, they're in a weird situation to where he's going to be the number one fall guy, though. That I will tell you. If things don't work out, and with all the media attention that Watt's going to bring on top of having Hopkins there, and that it also puts pressure on other teams in the Division II, Ryan. And I don't want to make this an NFC West segment, but now if you're the 49ers, are you going to try and get Deshaun Watson? Is Jimmy Garoppolo really the guy? J.J. Watt just came into your division, right? Matt Stafford's in your division now. So this is a move that not only affects Arizona, but it affects everyone else too. You got a quarterback up in Seattle that wants out, allegedly. It's a big move for a lot of reasons.
You made the point that no matter what, Watt is in a better position than he was previously. I saw a tweet that came out from Josh Reed. I guess he's a Bills reporter because he says, for what it's worth, Bills fans, I spoke to someone who was on the Texans coaching staff with Watt, and the review wasn't glowing. He's selfish, only cared about his stats. He does a lot of things that hurts the defense. He hurt us more than he helped us, and finally, I wouldn't want him. Like, you wonder why the players don't want to play for your organization. They don't want to go to your organization. Coaches don't want to go there either. Maybe it's because of like stuff like this, right? Like, who would want to go to an organization where this stuff comes out after a guy signs with a new team?
I can't believe they called J.J. Watt selfish. Like, I feel like he's the complete opposite of that, at least from what we get to see on a day-to-day basis of him. It shows the current state of the Houston Texans organization. You got to feel bad for Deshaun Watson. There we go. I almost said DeAndre Hopkins. I felt bad for him, too, until he got out. It's sad, right? Because they're basically just holding him there. And I mean, as they should if they think that he's their guy. But at the same time, this dysfunctional state that they're in, it's going to be really hard to build a championship contender with everything there. And who knows, maybe David Culley, right, the head coach that they just hired. Sure, right? I never really heard of him until they hired him. Maybe he's going to be the fix, but to sit out and to call basically the face of the franchise for the past however many years selfish and only cared about himself, yeah, J.J. Watt's in a much better spot now. We'll leave it at that.
I don't think the Texans are the biggest dumpster fire out of the major four professional organizations and their sports teams within them. I think they're in the top three. Where would they land for you? Out of all the teams in the major four leagues, where would the Texans land in terms of most dysfunctional garbage fire teams?
Well, hold on, I would say definitely top three. I'm scrolling through all the other teams right now. I mean,
there's a couple baseball teams I would consider for number one and probably number two. But I think the Texans have firmly taken the worst NFL organization by far. Yeah,
and mind you, a couple of years ago, they were a shoo-in for the first playoff game of the year. Mm-hmm. Every year, they were a shoo-in for that 4:30 slot on ESPN every year. And they were consistently making the playoffs. Granted, they capitalized on a weak division with a lot of bad quarterback play for a number of years. I compare it to the Andy Dalton Bengals. The equivalent of that, except the Andy Dalton Bengals turned into the Joe Burrow Bengals, and that's going to be really good. The Deshaun Watson Texans are still the Deshaun Watson Texans, just with a lot of dysfunction around them. So I'm telling you, this is going to put a lot of pressure on San Francisco. If Shanahan's going to go out there and make a move with everything else going on in his division, it's going to put a lot of pressure on him. So this affects a lot more than just Houston and Arizona.
Well, we've talked about a couple quarterbacks so far, so we do want to, in this NFL segment, there's a couple more quarterbacks that we want to talk about. One we alluded to earlier, we'll get to him in a second, but we need to talk about this Drew Brees thing that came out. It seemed as though it was a foregone conclusion that playoff game would be his last and he would finally step away and retire like he probably should have done earlier, but regardless, a video came out recently of him doing some type of major workout in his driveway. I don't think you're doing that type of a workout if you're just going to be hanging with the wife and kids for the rest of your life. So it leads to the question, do we really think that he's going to come back for another season? I think he will come back for one more season, just based on that video. It's a little. There's too much going on now to make it seem like he's not going to come back.
So, I've heard this from multiple different sports shows throughout the day that the Saints are kind of screwed, right? Because if Drew Brees wants to come back, you kind of have to bring him back, right? He's like the face of the franchise. He is the reason why you have a Super Bowl ring. You have to bring him back no matter how bad he's been and how injury prone he's been the past couple of years. And at the same time, if he doesn't come back, now you have to go out and find a solution at quarterback. But if he doesn't make this decision soon, Ryan, it's going to be almost time for NFL free. One of the things we forgot to mention with March, Ryan, is NFL free agency too. So you get that, and then you start to evaluate draft prospects too. You need, like, he's kind of, these teasers that he's throwing out there is kind of screwing over the Saints. Because they need to know what the direction is they're taking. I mean, I think they're hoping that he kind of stays retired just so they could sign somebody, draft somebody. But remember, Jameis Winston's a free agent. And you're paying all that money to Taysom Hill to do whatever it is he does for your team. They're in a really weird spot. If he comes back, Ryan, I can't see more than 8 wins for that team. Maybe 9. Am I wrong?
No, and that's, as you said, he's putting them in a bad position either way. I just feel like if he was going to retire, he would have told them already so they could start preparing. I feel like he's the type of guy that would at least owe that to the organization. He would help them out as his final parting gift so they could prepare for the 2021 season. The fact that he still hasn't told them that he's retiring, that there's too much smoke around this. I just find it hard to believe that he's not coming back at this point. But as you said, if you're the organization, I think that's bad because we saw what this guy did last season. I think in September he was passable. He was still, middle of the road. You could still win with him. But as the season went on, I understand he suffered some major injuries, but you're not going to win anything if this guy comes back. I agree. Like this is an 8-8, maybe 9-7 team. Well, I guess they're going to play 17 games, so up that by a game. Still, this would be awful short and long term for the organization if he comes back. Especially, they're already in such a bad cap situation. It's not going to be any easier if he comes back for one more year.
Well, don't forget that all the quarterbacks are going to be gone by pick 8 in this draft, right? I mean, even Mac Jones I'm seeing is going top 10 now in some mocks. So, if you're not one of those teams, if you don't have the capital to go up and get one of those quarterbacks, then you're going to get Kyle Trask. And no offense to Kyle Trask, but if you're looking for the future of your franchise, most of those guys are going to be in the top 10, right? And if you have Drew Brees come back, then you're like, okay, well, we're just going to go all in on our last, hurrah with him. So you're going to draft maybe a different need other than quarterback and just sign, I don't know, Winston again to another year or two. It's just, they're in such a bad spot. You mentioned the cap space. We see other teams that are kind of capped out. The Patriots were in Brady's final year too. So that's why a lot of people kind of had this weird evaluation of Tom Brady when he came to Tampa. Does he still have it? Can he win somewhere else? Yes, he can. The Patriots were capped out, and the Saints are going to be in the same position because you just don't have a lot of flexibility. So it's a lose-lose. It really is. He comes back. It's not even like he's going to put butts in the seats because you're still going to have COVID restrictions. So you can't sell out the Superdome. So you can't make money off of that. Everyone's already has a Drew Brees jersey. You can't make money off of that anymore. So he's just going to come back to go win 8 games. It's a lose-lose situation. And if he retires, then you're just going to be crap anyway because you need to find another solution at quarterback.
I need to make it clear, I'm not a professional athlete, just in case anybody out there was wondering. I'm never going to understand how, I understand these guys are competitive, but I obviously can't put myself in their shoes because it's just a different mindset. So with that preface out of the way, I wish these guys just knew when to step away at the right time before they ruin their legacy. I mean, we saw what Phillip Rivers did. He was still solid this past season, but he stepped away at a good time. But now we see Drew might come back for another year. It seems like Big Ben's going to come back for another year. I just wish that these guys would would just know when the right time was to step away. Like, I almost feel like Brady is contributing to this a little bit. Like, they see this guy Brady who's going to be in his mid-40s, and he's still slinging it. He just led a historically inept franchise to a Super Bowl title. They're like, oh, well, if he can do that, I can do that. But it's not the same. Like, Brady isn't these other two guys. Like, for their sake, I wish they would be remembered just for their incredible careers and not, well, they really played 2 or 3 years longer than they should have.
Well, I think the other comparison with that would be Peyton Manning. And we all remember Peyton wasn't all that efficient in his last couple of years in Denver, but he won a Super Bowl. And the last football memory we really have of Peyton Manning is winning a Super Bowl, right? So now these guys are coming back. I think in a lot of ways people forget that Drew Brees has won a Super Bowl, right? And I think a lot of people feel the same way about Rodgers, feel the same way about Big Ben, because for whatever reason, these guys haven't been able to get back to the big one. And again, that's contributing to the narrative of how Tom Brady is the best to ever play in the NFL because of how frequently he's been there compared to these other really good quarterbacks. And I feel bad for Brees. I really do, right? He is one of those pinnacle figures of our NFL childhood, right? You know, play Madden every year, your fantasy draft every year, back when quarterbacks were valued pretty high, and you're like, oh, we're going to draft Drew Brees this year kind of thing. Like, now it's just kind of sad. And, like, again, I'm not a professional athlete. I am, 140 pounds soaking wet. So, I clearly have no experience whatsoever playing football, except for when I broke my arm playing football. Ryan remembers that story. I can't really criticize him if he wants to come back, as you said, but it's just sad. It really is. What does it do? What does it do for his legacy? What does he need to prove to anybody?
Well, that's the thing. It's just we're never going to understand. I mean, on one hand, we understand why these guys come back year after year, even if they don't have it anymore. On the other hand, we don't really understand it because we can't put ourselves in that shoes. You have to have a special mindset to be an athlete like them. But it's just almost 3 months ago, 2.5 months ago, I'll say, we did an entire segment about Brees' legacy and what we were going to remember about him. Well, now if this guy comes back for another year, that's part of his legacy. He played too long. I understand what he was trying to go for, but he didn't put up the best performances. That'll forever be attached if he keeps coming back.
Well, look at Jason Witten. I mean, right? He steps out for a year. He goes and tries to do broadcasting, then comes back to the Raiders. And I'm going to be honest with you, I completely forgot he was playing football for half the year. He would come in, and Zach would know this being a Raiders fan. I'd see him catch one ball every 8 weeks. I'm like, oh, that's Jason Witten. That's what we're going to be doing with Drew Brees. Oh, that's Drew Brees. A nice 7-yard route in the flat, right? I mean, it's he's demonstrated that it's kind of limiting the offense, right? You know, Michael Thomas is only running slant routes. They're not moving the ball down the field. Kamara's catching the ball out of the backfield and trying to do 40 yards after the catch just to keep the ball moving. We saw what happened when Jameis came in, right? Literally, we were in the group chat, and you and I were saying, put in Jameis. And Zach's like, oh, Jameis sucks. And then the first play he does, he throws a 60-yard bomb to the end zone. And that's what they're missing. They have the deep threats. They have all the weapons. But again, they're in a bad spot because you can't turn down the face of the franchise. You can't turn down, the hero of the city. You can't. If Tom wanted to keep playing in New England, Rob Kraft would have rolled out 8 Brinks trucks and said, here you go, here, come stay, right? And they could have been 5-11, and they still would have brought Brady back year after year. It's the same with Brees. It's going to be the same with all those other guys, Big Ben. Although if there's one franchise, Ryan, that's going to cut the ties, it would be the Steelers with Big Ben. If there's any of them that would do that.
Drew, if you by any chance find yourself listening to this podcast because you saw your name in it through the SEO, please just enjoy the rest of your life with your wife and kids. You don't have to come back. Another quarterback before we move off of the NFL that's made a lot of headlines recently is Russell Wilson. There's, as Matt said, allegedly he wants out. Maybe he doesn't want out. Apparently, he had a meeting, and then he stormed out of the meeting. Apparently, he's upset because they're not taking his requests and what he would like, this and that. There's a lot of smoke around Russell Wilson in the Seattle Seahawks organization right now. There's four. I thought it was kind of funny. He said, well, not he. It was reported that he doesn't want to be traded, but if he was, he would want to play for one of these four teams. So, okay, let me say this. Does Russell Wilson get traded, yes or no? I think
No.
yes. I'll say yes.
No way. I would fire Pete Carroll before I would trade Russell Wilson. I mean,
Well,
didn't he have issues with Pete too? I mean,
if internally he doesn't want to be there, but he's trying to, let them still have some leverage by saying, no, I really want to be here for a while, I think he does get traded. I think this is a fun story. I'm going to say it. When there's this much smoke, normally something happens. Now, is that always the case? No. It's basically a cliche. But it seems like there's too much going on. It seems like there's a lot of discontent within the organization. I think he does get moved. I think that I really do.
I mean, again, like Deshaun Watson, it wouldn't be the worst thing in the world depending on where he ends up. I mean, can you imagine him in Dallas? Right?
That would be fun. I want to see
almost-
him in Chicago, personally. I think that would be a lot of fun.
No, you don't.
He could fix that. Come on, he could fix that offense.
No, he's going to hate Matt Nagy after 2 weeks because of Matt Nagy is like the same as Pete Carroll, just younger. Like you can't deny in terms of just abandoning the run and well, actually no, Pete loves the run, so he's actually inverse Pete Carroll. So he abandons the run entirely and just wants to throw the ball 50 times with Mitch Trubisky. Nick Halper, if you're listening, I know we're going to talk after this probably. Listen, man, Russell Wilson is an upgrade over Dak Prescott. He's one of the few upgrades that you can get over Dak Prescott. We've had this debate before. And he's going to make that Zeke contract look good, right? I mean, because in hindsight, we're sitting there like, you gave all that money to a running back and you're sitting there trying to franchise tag Dak year after year to keep him around, and then you won't pay him long term. You get Russell Wilson, he makes all of it worth it, right? You give him CeeDee Lamb, Amari Cooper. What were the other destinations? Didn't he have New Orleans on his list too?
I don't think he had. I want to look it up.
Imagine that if Russell Wilson wants to go to New Orleans and Drew Brees wants to come back. What the hell do you do if you're in New Orleans? That's a good question. While you're looking that
here we
up,
go.
Ryan.
It was the Cowboys, the Raiders, the Saints, and the Bears.
All right,
the
Zach,
Saints
it's
can't.
not happening.
The Saints
Zach,
can't do it. The Raiders won't do it.
Yeah.
So it's really the Cowboys or the Bears. I'm going to say yes, and I'm going to say that he goes for the Bears. I think that the front office over there in Chicago, they feel all their seats warming up. I really think they're going to go all in for a quarterback, and I think they're going to try to trade for him.
Ryan, at this stage of Russell Wilson's career, right, and he's got like the whole setup, he's Mr. Unlimited. He's going to go from one horrible weather city to another horrible weather city to play for a team that hasn't won anything in our lifetime, basically, right? I mean, the only time they made the Super Bowl in our lifetime was with Rex Grossman. So let's put that in perspective. I don't think he's going to go there. Again, you're going to go from one crap weather city to another. I think that matters. I want to bring up the New Orleans point, Ryan. And again, Zach, it's not happening. Don't get your hopes up. I got my hopes up with the Aaron Rodgers crap to New England for a couple days. Don't do it. Okay, you got Derek Carr. Anyway, New Orleans, what if he wants to go there and Drew Brees wants to come back? What do? You kick Drew Brees to the curb. You say, see ya, man.
Nah,
right?
You could run some good formations with him, Taysom, and Drew Brees just all on the field at the same time. Nobody would be prepared for that. I think that would be fun.
That would be the only riveting storyline, is if he wants to come back and Wilson wants to go there. I mean, I think he ends up in Dallas if he ends up anywhere. I think Jerry Jones, if he really wants to just not pay Dak Prescott, that's the easiest solution, because you're going to upgrade over him and not have to pay Dak, which is, I think, both of what Jerry Jones wants to do. So he would almost make Mike McCarthy look like a good head coach too, which would be quite a narrative to follow.
Well, I can't say that I don't want that, because I'm saying I want to see Wilson even though Matt Nagy's there, I really don't want to see Russell Wilson and Mike McCarthy. I don't need that.
I just don't think he ends up in Chicago. There's no redeeming qualities about that position right now. Like that, just that where the franchise is. I know they made the playoffs, but if Cliff Kingsbury, and we just talked about the Cardinals, if they didn't fall apart, they would have made the playoffs over Chicago, and it would be a much different narrative. Don't remind you, they still have to pay some of their weapons too, Chicago. So it's not like they're scot-free, ready to go, bring in a quarterback, and we're set kind of thing. So I think he stays. I think it's going to be too hard to move a quarterback like him. I said the same thing about Watson, and I'll say the same thing about Wilson.
Well, the quarterback carousel continues to spin. It's only March 1st. By the time you listen to this, it'll be March 2nd. So we're going to keep talking about it. I'm sure we'll have a lot of stuff to cover, especially as Matt said, NFL free agency gets started soon, so I'm sure that'll kickstart some moves as well. Some things that are more in the foreground is college basketball. Now, we're going to talk about some college hoops, like general stuff, in a bit, but there are some conference tournaments that have already started or will start soon and will be over by the time we record our episode next week. So we want to talk about those right now just because we haven't spent a lot of time talking about low to mid majors, so this seems just like a good time to do it. And also because Matt previewed every single conference, so I think he is certainly qualified to do this. We're going to go in alphabetical order, so we're going to talk about 6 conferences. The first one we're going to talk about is the Atlantic Sun. They start up on March 4th. 8 teams in the bracket. Liberty won the regular season title for the 3rd consecutive season. Bellarmine got the number 2 seed. Now, of course, they're not eligible for the NCAA tournament, but it's still nice to see them have some success this year to start off. I have to imagine that Liberty is going to win it. I know you'd like Lipscomb coming into the year, but I feel like this has to be Liberty's title at this point.
Well, yeah, keyword, I did like Lipscomb a lot. I looking back on a lot of these predictions that I did in my crazy preview that I did, some of them were right, some of them weren't. I had Michigan 8th in the Big Ten. They're one of the best teams in the country. I don't think anyone predicted Michigan to do what they did. But in any case, listen, Richie McKay, in my opinion, is one of the best mid-major coaches in the land, right? Yeah, Liberty, he's done a great job. I mean, look at some of the products they've produced in recent years. I mean, Caleb Holmesley is in a G League right now, tearing it up for the Erie Bayhawks. He played for Liberty for a couple years. I think he was on that team that won a game. I guess, you know what? Time's such a weird thing. I guess that's 2 years ago was the last NCAA tournament, so that was the one when Liberty won a game, I guess. It's so hard to remember taking a year off, but I was very high on Stetson coming into the year, but it's Liberty's to lose. You mentioned Bellarmine. I sent you a Snapchat of it. Yes, on a Saturday, I watched Liberty and Bellarmine play a basketball game at 23 years old. That is what I did with my Saturday. So roast me all you want. But, yeah, the Bellarmine looked good. Right? You said it's their first year transitioning to D1. They're going to create problems, but I like Richie McKay's squad. I mean, what can I say? They're really good.
The finals for the Atlantic Sun, they are March 7th. You can catch that game on ESPN. It is scheduled for 2 p.m. The next conference we're going to go, and as I said, this is going to be in alphabetical order, is the Big South, the conference we're familiar with. I'm more familiar with it from football terms, but regardless, the Big South, they started up on February 27th. They've actually had games going on today as we're recording. In fact, they're probably going to be finished up here pretty soon. They will be finished up pretty soon looking at these scores. So the number 1 seed in this was Winthrop, the team that you had number 1 in your conference projections. So congratulations. They had a game today against High Point. So High Point defeated USC Upstate in the first round, 65-60. They got blown out today, 83-54. So Winthrop has advanced to the semifinals. The 2 seed Radford got to face off against Hampton today, who defeated Presbyterian 67-65. Radford won 67-52 today. So they've moved on to the semifinals. A really compelling 3-6 seed match up, Matt. With 38 seconds left, Campbell is up 57-55. So we'll see if that ends while we talk about the Big South. I'm sure it will. The 4-5 matchup, Longwood defeated UNC Asheville, so they have advanced to the semifinals. So it'll be Longwood and Winthrop, Radford and either Campbell or Gardner Webb. Excuse me. It's probably Winthrop, right? I mean, they've been pretty dominant all season long. It'd be a little surprising if they didn't win this bracket, in my opinion.
Well, the Birds, the Eagles of Winthrop, as you mentioned, they are really solid. They got 4 guys that average close to 10 points or more. Chandler Valdron's really good. I mentioned in the preview back in November, Adonis Arms, the guard, really good, averaging over 10 a game. Charles Falden, DJ Burns averaging out a little under 10. So those are the 4 main guys. They're 21-1. For a while, they were one of the last undefeated teams in the country. They're ridiculously good. They're another team I think can win a game. I would say more than Liberty. They could win a game in March if they get the right matchup. So they're exciting. If you could catch a Big South game, that's really the only team you got to focus on is Winthrop, unless they lose. But I doubt they will.
Well, we'll revisit it as soon as this game goes final, and then we can give you the semifinal matchups. Those will start on Thursday, March 4th. Of course, I said we already have the one, which is Winthrop and Longwood. Now we're just waiting on one more to set the final semifinal matchup. We'll go to the Valley and Arch Madness, which is the Missouri Valley Conference. They have Loyola as the number 1 seed, and Matt, you had Loyola Chicago as your number 1 in your projections, so congratulations. So Drake, I think the more interesting thing in this one, Drake, we talked about how dominant they were. They are missing 2 of their best players, unfortunately, so not only will Drake have the potential of not making the Arch Madness finals, they might get upended early. So I think that the pick here would have to be Loyola for the Valley. But do you have anyone else you're looking at?
Well, Porter Moser's done a great job there. Of course, if Loyola sounds familiar, I guess that's 3 years ago now, which is crazy to say. They were the team that made the Final Four, right? Was the 11th seed, I think. They went all the way from the first 4 to the Final Four for the first time since I think Shaka Smart and VCU did it. They were really exciting. There's a couple guys that are still there from that team. Lucas Williamson, I think. But the bigger one is Cameron Crutwig, one of the best bigs at the mid-major level. I had Northern Iowa, number 2. I was very high on them, but a lot of their guys got hurt really early on in the year. A.J. Green among them. You mentioned Drake, no Tank Hemphill. That was a big loss. I think that happened right before the Loyola series. If you look for a bid stealer, right? So the bid stealer is the team, as you said, that'll knock off one of the higher seeds and get that automatic bid. Missouri State is your bid stealer from this conference. They were a team that I picked 8th because it was just a disaster last year. They were one of the teams that brought in so many transfers, right? Tried to do the Eric Musselman method. Just bring in a bunch of guys that average 20 points a game somewhere and just see if it sticks. It didn't. They lost probably the most amount of players in the entire conference, and it worked out for them. So if there's any team that could steal a bid from Loyola and Drake, I think Drake is still in right now. I have them as like a 10 or an 11 seed. I think it's going to take a lot for them to be out, in my opinion, but Missouri State's the only team that could really steal a bid here.
Well, let me ask you this. If Drake loses first, well, it would technically be the second round of their conference tournament, how much does that hurt their at-large case?
It only hurts their at-large case if Michigan State wins a couple games in the Big Ten tournament, or Duke, or Georgia Tech. One of those like really marginal teams on the bubble, Syracuse, Ole Miss, if one of those teams, or even Utah State. So they need other teams to suck in order for them to just hold steady. But I think I have them comfortably in right now. I think even without some of their best players and dropping a couple games late in the season, I still think that they're better than Duke, and they'll put on a better show than Duke and Michigan State, in my opinion, at least right now.
This tournament starts on March 4th, on Thursday once again. You have Bradley and Southern Illinois at 5 p.m. You have UNI and then Illinois State at 8 p.m. And then Loyola gets the wonderful 11 a.m. game on March 5th. Those games are always fun. We'll move on now to the Ohio Valley Conference. Belmont, we talked about Belmont. I think we talked about them last week. They are the number 1 seed in the conference. You had them projected at number 2, so pretty close. Congratulations. It's probably Belmont, right, Matt? I mean, I know that one of their best players might not be at exactly 100%, but they're still a very talented team. I'd like to think that they can overcome that.
No, they'll be fine. They're very good. They could win multiple games in March as well. A couple years ago, they were the sexy pick with Dylan Windler, Nick Mazinski, and other guys. Should be the same narrative this year, minus Dylan Windler, obviously. But yeah, they're very solid. They've honestly been they're like a quieter version of Gonzaga in terms of consistency and double-digit win seasons. If you look them up, I mean, it's been a pretty sizable streak that they had under Rick Byrd, who's gotten a lot of airtime on this podcast over the past couple of weeks. So the Ohio Valley, I was a little disappointed. Austin Peay I thought would have been a little bit better than they were this year. Obviously you have teams like Murray State who are always going to be a sneaky team to make a run. They're like the 5 seed, I think. So it's an entertaining conference, but Belmont is far and away better.
Nick Halper's favorite conference is the one we're going to talk about next, the SoCon, the Southern Conference. In the preseason, you liked Furman a lot, and they ended up as the number 3 seed, but the talent level was there all season long. It just didn't necessarily show up on paper. So I think that you shouldn't count them out. The number 1 seed is UNC Greensboro. They ended up getting the number 1 slot. The number 2 seed was Wofford, a team that we've talked about a decent amount on this podcast since we started talking about college hoops. Their first round starts on March 5th. So, Matt, do you like the number 1 seed to take it home, or do you like your preseason number 1 Furman to showcase their talent and get that automatic bid?
Well, in my current bracket that is going to drop later this week on the website, quick plug, I have UNC Greensboro, but I'm still going to hammer my preseason pick, the Paladins of Furman. I mean, I think the talent's there, as you said. The coaching is 100% there. They played UNCG well a couple weeks ago. That was one of those 5 o'clock on a Wednesday kind of ESPN deals. I think you can't go wrong either way. Former Tar Heel Wes Miller at UNCG. He's a really good. There's a lot of good coaches in the SoCon. A lot of good coaches. A lot of the 40 under 40 or whatever it is. A lot of them are there. So that's a really exciting conference to watch. But again, I mean, Noah Gurley, one of the better scorers at that conference. I think Furman can do it. It's going to be one of the two. I know that's a cop-out answer. It's going to be one of the two.
Yeah. Well, even outside of them, though, I was reading that this should be a competitive conference tournament regardless. I read that 1 through 8, it's all relatively close. I mean, you have teams like Chattanooga, East Tennessee State, VMI, Mercer, the Citadel. So would you agree that as it pertains to conference tournaments, this will probably be one of the more entertaining ones?
Yeah, I would say this and Arch Madness that we just talked about are 2 of the more entertaining mid-major conferences. I mean, I thought VMI was going to be awful this year, and they turned out to be the 6th seed. I think teams like even, the 8-9 of the Citadel in Western Carolina, 2 pretty interesting teams to watch. I know most of people our age don't watch Western Carolina play basketball. I do, and they're pretty entertaining. You mentioned East Tennessee State. They had some really good teams back when we were in college. I think one of them cracked 30 wins at one point or close to it. So they don't produce a lot of wins in the NCAA tournament for obvious reasons in terms of a talent gap, but the teams that they have representing this conference year in and year out are right up there with some of the best mid-major conferences.
Well, the final conference we're going to talk about in this episode is the Sun Belt Conference. They will start up on Friday, March 5th. Texas State got one of the 1 seeds, and Georgia State got the other 1 seed. I'll give you credit for Texas State. You said this might be a bit of a reach, but the Bobcats could make some real noise this season, and you are correct. They did, and they were rewarded with one of the 2 1 seeds. So Matt, of course, they're very good. Georgia State's very good. Louisiana has a solid squad. Who do you like to come out of the Sun Belt and get that automatic bid?
Well, I used to be a big Little Rock guy. They've really kind of tailed off in the past couple weeks of the regular season. But Texas State, I mentioned it back in November. They're coming off a really good season last year. They followed it up with 18 wins in a shortened year this year. They lost at Texas by 21, but I think they look competitive at times there. The Sun Belt has some pretty solid teams. Georgia State, too, I watched them the other day, but I'm picking a lot of the one seeds, but it's for a reason. Mason Harrell averaging like 14 points a game there. Caleb Asbury, Isaiah Small, two other guys that average double digits. I like Texas State. I really do.
Well, those were the 6 conferences that we're going to get into. For the Big South, Campbell ended up winning 63-57. So your semifinal matchups is Winthrop and Longwood. That'll be on Thursday, along with Radford and Campbell. They did get the win over the 6-seed Gardner-Webb. We're going to talk about more mid-major conferences next week once more of these tournaments get underway. We just wanted to do these today because by the time we record our next episode, they will be over. So we just wanted to get our thoughts in today, and we wanted to get Matt's analysis. We also want to get his analysis on just some general college hoop stuff because we are 13 days away from Selection Sunday. As he alluded to, if you were listening closely, he does have an article coming up soon, his next bracket outlook. So we will talk about that briefly. We're not going to spoil the entire thing, but we do want to get some of the big things out there. So the one seeds from the last time we talked, the battle for it, it's looking a little different depending on who you ask. Some people think Illinois has done enough to jump up. Some people still have Ohio State there. Regardless, it seems like you have a big 3 of Gonzaga, Michigan, and Baylor. So who right now, we're going to ask you again like we do every week, who are your 4 number 1 seeds right now?
Well, on the Google sheet that I use for this, Ohio State is that 4th number 1. You mentioned the 3 previous ones. Ohio State is currently that 1. I'm leaning towards switching it to Illinois before I post. I think Ohio State is still a really good team, but I think Illinois is making a really good run late. They had a little bit of a rough patch, I guess, in December, maybe early January, but they've really kind of come into form, even without Ayo Dosunmu, who has a facial injury. They say he's going to be back for some postseason format, whether it be the Big Ten tournament, whether it be March Madness. I mean, he is what makes them go. I think he has made a case to be National Player of the Year over Luka Garza, which says a lot because he's been the shoe-in since October. And Ayo's come in and played really well. I mean, you have Kofi Coburn there, Adam Miller, Isaiah Corbello. So if there's any team that's going to sneak in there, by the time I post it, it's going to be Illinois. And you want to talk about good games tomorrow, well, I guess today, Ryan, if you're listening to this today, which is Tuesday, March 2nd, you got West Virginia and Baylor at 5 o'clock, ESPN. That's a top 6 matchup. Then you get Michigan and Illinois at 7 p.m., ESPN. It's a top 6 matchup. So that's your Tuesday night plans, everybody. Just watch that. Sit down after work, get some dinner, sit in front of the TV, watch some West Virginia, Bob Huggins. And at 7 o'clock, you switch over. Juwan Howard, Michigan. Great way to spend your Tuesday.
Well, let me ask you this. As I said, we're not going to spoil a lot because I want people to actually read the article. Which teams are giving you the most trouble when it comes to figuring out where to put them? Like, who are some of those teams?
I would say the teams that are currently giving everybody fits: Duke, Michigan State. Yeah. These teams that we don't really know if they're good. Michigan State, sub 500 in the Big Ten. We get that the Big Ten is one of the best conferences. That is the best conference in the land, but they still, just for whatever reason, can't put it together for long stretches. They had a really good week up until, I guess, 2 days ago. If you're listening to this on Tuesday, they flopped at College Park. I don't think they looked really good for long stretches there. You got Duke, who has been so inconsistent, Ryan, on a week-to-week basis. So I would say those two teams, because you want to put them in because they're the big names, and I think the committee wants to put them in, but at the same time, it's hard to make a case for teams like Duke without Jalen Johnson. I mean, you lose in overtime at home to Louisville on Saturday. And even Michigan State, I would rather make a case for Michigan State because I think they're the better team than Duke, personally. But they looked really bad 2 days ago. So those are the two teams that I'm having the most trouble with.
One more question I want to ask you, and then I'll let you say anything else that you would like to about college hoops. Florida State, you have them, you said, what, as a number 2 seed?
Yeah, they're currently a 2 for me.
Okay, so I'm looking at the bracket matrix, which for any college basketball fans, this is always a lot of fun to look at around this time just to see where people have certain teams. Florida State, I'd say primarily a lot of people have them as a 3 seed. I see some 4s, very rare 5s, but some people do have them as 2 seeds along with you. So what do you like about them to where you have them on the 2 line?
My guy Andy Katz gave me the inspiration to put them at the 2. Made the leap of faith to go out there. I mean, I've been pounding my fist for Florida State since the season started. I said this somewhere. I wrote this somewhere. The interchangeability of their lineup. Because 1 through 5, they're all like 6'6" or bigger. They all got a wingspan of like 7 feet. They all could shoot the ball from anywhere. They all could rebound the basketball. They all could run in transition. I mean, this is 1 through 10, even more off the bench too. So literally every guy can do everything. And Leonard Hamilton does this year in and year out. His guys are doing that in the G League, overseas, the NBA, wherever they're playing. It's been a consistent basketball factory in recent years. I mean, you look at guys like Terrence Mann, Mufasa Kabengele. I mean, there's so many guys that are playing at the next level. Trent Forrest, who's in the G League right now too. And there's a lot. You see a lot more Florida State. And you're starting to kind of see that it's becoming one of the more quieter ACC powers. You look at teams like Virginia, everyone said, including me, that they were the team to beat in the ACC, a weaker ACC. But again, Florida State, they go into the tournament. Sometimes they're underseeded. Not a lot of people pick them. And then you see them in the second weekend. It's almost a yearly thing with them. And now that I said this, they're probably going to lose one of their first 2 games in a tournament because that's just how it works for me. But again, the interchangeability of their roster is what makes them special, for me at least.
Leonard Hamilton just got a well-deserved 5-year contract extension that came out today.
And so he's in his 70s. Look up Leonard Hamilton. He's in like his 70s or, I think 70s. He looks ageless.
He does.
So, yeah.
Yeah, you could say 45, and I would believe you just looking at the pictures that you see pop up when you search him on Google. So before we get off of college basketball for one more week, is there anything else that you think people should know heading into this week? A lot of conference tournaments going on. As you said, some big games. What should people know?
So the age for Leonard Hamilton is 72, to be exact, which is crazy, again, if you Google a picture of Leonard Hamilton. Right now, just looking at some of the scores, Ryan Rutgers got absolutely blasted by a really bad Nebraska team tonight. That's not good for their seeding. I still think they're comfortably in. I said this to you off the air. This game's going on right now. Syracuse is going to backdoor their way into the NCAA tournament. They do every year. They're going to win against North Carolina right now, right? They're 13-8. If they win, they go to 14-8. They're plus 500 in the ACC. That's my bold prediction. Syracuse is going to find a way, like they do every year, and like they did in 2016, to sneak in to the NCAA tournament. So that's my big take to end this segment.
Well, that was college basketball for our first episode in March. As I said, we're going to have a lot to talk about. And I'm going to put in our big announcement right now just because it makes sense. Thanks to this unit right here beside me, the Best Available Player Twitch channel will be starting soon. If you watch the video version of this, you might see the little Twitch logo at the bottom right. We do have a Twitch channel. We haven't been able to use it yet, but we are going to start, and our first stream is going to be Selection Sunday. So we're excited about that. We're going to send out reminders and stuff as well, obviously, but we're excited to be doing some stuff on the Twitch channel now. We're going to be doing not only college basketball, we're excited to do some stuff for the NFL draft next month. We'll do some gaming stuff. Just we're going to have a lot of fun with it. So that's the big announcement. Not Matt's GoFundMe for his office chair. It's the Best Available Player Twitch channel, twitch.com/Best Available Player. Really easy to find. Great branding. So yeah, the first stream, Selection Sunday, live reactions, which will be fun.
I got one more tidbit for you. I think Richmond, a team that, I've talked about all year, a couple articles, they played themselves out of the tournament tonight. Quad 4 loss to your guys at St. Joe's, Ryan.
That's home. A bad loss.
Listen, I'm the biggest Richmond guy you're going to find, but they might have played themselves out of the bubble with that. So that was the one thing I forgot to mention. A quad 4 loss, by the way. That's not good.
So my family gets the Philadelphia Inquirer, so of course they cover St. Joe's a lot. I've read about St. Joe's. As you said, it hasn't been a great season for St. Joe's, so to lose to that team, that's probably not good. We're going to move on now. Moment of silence for Richmond. We got through that. So now we're going to have kind of like a quick hitter segment. We're just going to talk about some other things that we want to talk about that we couldn't really discuss for like a full segment, but we did want to get our thoughts in. So we're going to start with the SheBelieves Cup for 2021. The United States won. Woohoo! Go USA! 3-0-0. They scored 9 goals. They did not allow any. They got better each game. Their first win, Rose Lavelle scored the lone goal. Their second game, they had Preston Rapinoe, and then they really piled it on in the final game, 6-0, I'm sorry, over Argentina. Rapinoe scored twice, so she was the cup leader for goals. She ended up scoring 3. Lloyd, Mewis, Morgan, Press each scored as well. They are a very good team, Matt. This will probably be one of the best sports teams I see in my lifetime. Just this women's team is so much fun to watch. They're incredible.
Yeah, it's like, I was trying to put it into words when you were introducing this segment, because I hate when I relate things all the way back to my teams that I like watching, right, Ryan? Like my 4 core teams. But like, it's like watching the Patriots times 10 of how dominant they are. Like year in, year out, game in, game out, match in, match out. It's just really fun. And I said this to you off the air. One thing I really like, obviously this is a tournament setting, but even the exhibitions they play, the friendlies, again, I'm in basketball mode. My lingo isn't quite turned over yet. If you ask me in May, I'm going to be soccer Matt. But in any case, they schedule a lot of matches against good teams, and they blow them out. It's appointment TV for sure. It's must-watch TV week in and week out when they play. They're just really fun. You mentioned one of the best teams in our lifetime. I think it's easily top 5.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, we mentioned the Patriots. You have the U.S. women's national team. I mean, who else can you think of off the top of your head of any team? They're easily top 5.
It's very hard. They're so dominating no matter who they play. I mean, they have talent up and down the roster. It's, as you said, it's hard to put into words. Like, it's very rare to see a team take the pitch or take the field or take the court, match in, match out, and just thoroughly dominate the teams that they play. It's not close. Like, they're always the better team in all facets. It's impressive. It's astonishing.
Well, they just keep reloading talent too, right? Because I remember, I mean, I guess this isn't, I'm going back 10 years, but obviously, some of these players played more recently, but like Abby Wambach, right? I mean, they just replace them with more players and more really talented soccer players that could score. It's exciting too, right? Their highlights are more exciting than other teams. I'll just leave that point there for people to connect the dots. it's just it's so exciting. It is, and I like to. They play. I told you this again off the air too. I gotta stop telling you my points off the air because it defeats the organic conversation. They play a lot, and I think that's really good to keep growing the fan base, growing, just the dominance that they have on a yearly basis.
The state of women's soccer and girls soccer even in this country, it's just so healthy. As you said, they're able to replenish the talent that they have, but I mean, even just in general, the state of girls and women's soccer. I mean, I worked for a company and we covered soccer. I mean, I saw boys teams play and I saw girls teams play. There's just so much talent on the girls side. You could say that for a lot of sports too. In basketball, in softball, lacrosse, there's so much talent on the girls side in all of these sports that you can watch in our country. Like it's
Well, let me tell you this too. Let me tell you this too. I've worked at a summer camp for a number of years. One of the most popular jerseys is the U.S. Women's National Team jersey.
Yeah.
Right? That's one of the most popular things I see on like a summer day. Again, that's when a lot of times they'll play too, just because of the seasons being over. I see a lot of Alex Morgan jerseys, kits. Again, sorry. I've seen some Lavelle jerseys. I'm trying to think of it's definitely very healthy, as we said. And like I would run the soccer elective at camp, right? And it would be a lot of, girls playing too, and they would have the Alex Morgan jerseys on, and I want an Alex Morgan jersey. Can we set up a GoFundMe for that?
We got to get your office chair first. I mean, that's why.
I screw that. I would rather have the back paint. I'd rather have an Alex Morgan jersey.
Excuse
me, kit.
Yep,
Sorry.
Yeah, I mean, I was very excited to get that Rapinoe shirt that I wore in I don't know why I pointed back there like it was there. The Rapinoe shirt that I got in the mail. Like I'm very excited. Like I'm proud to represent a team that I like a lot, and that's very good to watch and it's very good overall.
Well, you got, in terms of dominant U.S. teams, I mean, they're right up there at the top, right? You got them, you got men's basketball, women's basketball. I mean, running up the score in a lot of sports. So it's the Olympics, if they happen, when they happen, who the hell knows? In any case, they'll be there and they'll win. So.
Well, the NWSL, we talked about this a little bit last summer when we started our podcast, but the NWSL is starting up again soon. In 2 months, players have actually reported to camp already. That started 1 month ago, February 1st. And then they will have a 24-game regular season starting on May 15th. The NWSL got a lot of praise, which they deserved, a lot of well-deserved praise last season, just based on how they handled a lot of things, and also their viewership was pretty good, and I'm hoping that it continues to increase this year. I mean, that's another. I mean, you want to see some of the players on the U.S. national team. Well, they're in the NWSL, so you can watch them there too, which is always really cool. So be sure to. We're definitely going to talk about that. I mean, hopefully we'll actually have some interesting things to disclose about the NWSL in a couple months.
We have some plans.
We have some things in the works, yeah. So hopefully we'll have some exciting news for you guys on that front soon. But yeah, that'll be our recommendation. Definitely check out the NWSL. I mean, they stream games on Twitch. You can watch them on CBS, CBS All Access. So I hope they put more games on CBS this year. That's my one issue. I really hope CBS airs more of the games on just the regular cable channel.
Well, here's a plug too. If you live in New Jersey or the tri-state area, we got a team right in our backyard playing at Red Bull Arena, Sky Blue. I think, I can't remember, this might be year 2 or year 3 at RBA. I can't remember when they started playing there, but it's right near, RBA is right off the major roads, right? Fans are coming back into the stands. You want to get outside, you want to be around people, you want to watch sports. We got a team right in our backyard. And a good one, too. So it's a win-win, win-win.
Yeah, this isn't me putting down any of the NWSL teams, but Sky Blue is just an incredibly well-run organization. Of course, the Murphys are some of the owners, but I mean, Elise LaHue, there we go. has done an incredible job turning around that team. I mean, before she got there, I mean, you can read the articles. The fan base and people around the team weren't really confident long term, but they're one of the most well-run organizations, not just in the NWSL, but I'd say in all of professional sports. So they've had a remarkable turnaround. So, and they're, as you said, if you live in New Jersey, they're a great team to go catch a game. So, I mean, the tickets would be cheap, atmosphere would be fun. Of course, I know COVID, but it's support the team, I think, is the big thing.
The one spin zone thing is obviously we won't have packed stadiums anytime soon because of COVID. And RBA is a pretty big venue, so you get to spread out a little bit. Maybe get some food, sit down, you get a little row to yourself, maybe.
Sure.
We might have to cook something like that up. I know we have some plans. It'll be, but as someone who has been to RBA multiple times, it's a great place to watch a soccer game. So definitely check that out. So they used to play at Rutgers, I think, too, but RBA is obviously a step up in terms of location and facilities and everything like that.
Yeah, just a little step up, little small step. So that was the SheBelieves Cup. That was soccer, which we were happy to talk about. MLS starts soon too, so we're going to get Doc Harmon back on at some point. I know he has a very busy schedule, but hopefully he'll be able to take some time out of his day once again, as he did several months ago. NASCAR. Fox had been advertising this as the best season ever. It's still too early to say that, but it has been a fun season so far. You'd had 2 first-time winners to start off the season in Michael McDowell and Christopher Bell. And you just had William Byron get his second win of his still young career yesterday at Homestead. So Homestead was a very, very fun race. You had Chris Buescher running up there for a while, but then once the sun went down, you had cars that were at the front fall to the back, and cars that were at the back move their way to the front, which is really fun to see. And yeah, we have 3 different winners so far, which has been fun. We haven't had any like the dominating big names win a race yet, which has been really cool. You still have Hamlin, Harvick, and Logano at the top of the points grid right now, but Michael McDowell is in 4th place in the points. He's one of 2 drivers to get 3 top 10s to start the season. The other one being Kevin Harvick, which is incredible. This guy had, I think, a small handful of top 10s. I think he had 4 all of last year. Well, he's had 3 already this season in the first 3 races. He's never had back-to-back top 10s, and he has 3 in a row. Christopher Bell is 7th in points. As he got to win. William Byron has already locked himself into the playoffs. So now he doesn't have that hanging over his shoulder like he did a season ago when he had to win the final regular season race, which was at Daytona. So NASCAR's been great so far. Now they go West Coast. They're going to be at Las Vegas, which will be fun. We might see that's where we might see one of the big names win a race, but I mean, who knows? I mean, it's been unpredictable so far. It's been a lot of fun to follow. So if you're looking for something to just throw on a Sunday afternoon, they start at 3:30 Eastern. Throw in a NASCAR race. They've been fun so far.
Yeah, I'm going to be honest with you. I've had no idea who these people are that are winning these races. You got Michael McDonald's, you got Christopher Taco Bell, now you got William Shakespeare Byron winning a race. Sure, I'm a big Denny Hamlin guy personally, but yeah, I did not watch the race, Ryan, so I can't provide commentary this week. All I know is Michael McDonald's is killing it, him and Christopher Taco Bell.
Yeah, it's Homestead is one of the best racetracks on the circuit right now, but yeah, I'm glad that it was still another good race. And as I said, we got some good races coming up. We got Bristol Dirt this month in March, on March 28th, so that'll be fun. And then we got next month some road courses coming up pretty soon, not just next month, but the months to follow. So a lot of fun stuff coming up. Martinsville Night Race, we got that coming up. That's on April 10th, so just about a month away. The first of 2 races at Atlanta is in a couple weeks on March 21st, so I guess 3 weeks. A lot of fun stuff to look forward to.
Is that the Coca-Cola 600, or is that the one in Memorial Day or near Memorial Day? Which one's the Coca-Cola 600?
That is at Charlotte. That is around Memorial Day weekend. So that is that one. So we're still a couple of months away from that. But yeah, as I said, a lot of these races, most of them, they start at 3 or 3:30. So let's just toss it on the TV and just see what happens. It's been a fun season so far. Are there any other sports or entertainment things that you thought happened or that you thought were interesting that you just want to get out there real quick that happened in the last week or so?
One thing we should acknowledge, Tiger Woods, obviously a story that was covered a lot in the past week. I think it happened like literally the day after we recorded. Thank God he's okay, right? We almost relived the Kobe Bryant tragedy, right? Almost like a year and month to the day kind of thing. So that was my biggest thing. I mean, people were questioning like, oh, is he going to get back out on the course? Listen, he won the Masters like when we were old enough, right? He won when we were in college, so we could like really appreciate the moment. And now we should just appreciate the fact that he could still be here and contribute to the game of golf and be around and, go and talk to Jim Nance on CBS at Riviera, right? We should be thankful for that now. So just wanted to throw that out into the airwaves.
Yeah, it was neat to see so many of the golfers wear red yesterday in the final round to honor Tiger. I thought that was really neat to see. You can tell how much of an influence he's had, not just on the sport, but on a lot of those individual golfers as well. A lot of them, he was the guy when they were growing up, the same as us. So he's obviously well respected, not just in the golf world. We saw so much respect pour in from everywhere, from every corner of the world when that happened. And as you said, thank goodness he's okay. And just hopefully, regardless of whether or not he can ever golf again, just hopefully he makes a nice full recovery and he can just enjoy his life. So yeah, that was a good thing to bring up. As you said, if that happened soon after we recorded our episode, so we didn't get to talk about it last week. Is there anything else?
Spring training started yesterday or 2 days ago. The Red Sox had to use a mercy rule to get Garrett Richards out of a bad inning, so we're already off to a great start this year. Baseball's back. Everyone's excited. I was excited until about 1:30 today. Then I quickly realized what kind of year I'm in for. Hey, Matt, listen, it's only day 2 of spring training. Yeah. No.
Yeah, I think I have a problem because I know these games don't mean anything, but DJ Stewart hit a 2-run shot in the first inning off of Aaron Nola today, and like I did like flinch a little bit. I was like, like I was a little upset, and I was like, I got it. Spring training doesn't matter. They're working on stuff. You never want to see your team lose. It doesn't like I don't want to see the Eagles lose in the preseason. So it's just you don't want your team to do bad. But it is nice to just 1:00. Early March, it's not very nice here, but you just turn on the TV, you see 80-degree blue skies. It makes you feel a little warmer. It makes you feel better. So I'm glad that spring training started.
Yeah, I'm all out of sports now. That's all I got.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know. I haven't watched any bowling recently, so I don't know if that's going on.
Well, we reached the anniversary of one of the greatest bowling moments in history.
Yes. Oh, we could talk about that. Yeah.
Who do you think you are? I am.
I love it. It's never going to get old.
But the problem is I quote that to some people and they have no idea what, like they think I'm just being like narcissistic. I'm like, no, I'm actually quoting somebody here. Like this is an actual quote. Like, where's that from? That doesn't make any sense. I'm like, well, you got to watch the PBA or whatever the professional bowling is.
Yeah, I've started realizing that I'm a little old because I'm starting to reference things and people don't know what it is, and it makes me feel old. So I guess 24 is the new 30. We're gonna end this episode before we get too sentimental with a start bench cut. We haven't done this in a while, but it seemed like a good time to do it, and We're going to end with a start bench cut of March Madness weekends is what I wrote down. I couldn't see my handwriting. So, of course, March Madness broken down into basically 3 weekends. You have rounds 1 and 2, then you have you have the Sweet 16, the Elite 8, and then you got the Final Four and the National Championship. So, as our college basketball expert, I'll let Matt go first and give his SBC for the March Madness weekends.
So I'm going to, right off the bat, cut the Final Four in the championship game because that means the season's over. That means you hear One Shining Moment play at around midnight on a Monday night in April, and then you realize, like, man, I got to wait all the way until, like, November to watch college basketball again. So that's definitely the easy cut, especially, too, if you get all the buildup and then you get a blowout in the Final Four or the national championship, then it's even worse. I also think that it looks weird in football stadiums. I'm still going to stand by that point. Basketball should be played in a basketball arena. And this is coming from the big college basketball fan. It looks weird. But maybe that'll wear off on me eventually. I'm going to I'm going to bench the first weekend, right? So the first couple days, you get 12 hours worth of basketball for 4 consecutive days, which I love. Don't get me wrong. But I'm going to start the second weekend, which is the most underrated weekend. It's basically like the equivalent of the divisional round for the NFL playoffs because you get some of the best matchups. This is, in theory, the best 16 and then 8 teams that you're going to have in this tournament, or the hottest teams or whatever, the most intriguing teams, the best storylines. So the Sweet 16 and the Elite 8 are the 2 best rounds of the NCAA tournament.
I'm going to agree with you on cutting the Final Four and championship weekend. I think that's a given. I'm going to start the first weekend. I think that's where the most fun can be had. Normally, it would be fun to get together with the fellas and watch the first round and the first and second rounds of the March Madness tournament. Just because there's so much going on. You got this going on one screen, this going on the other. You're checking your phone. You're looking at your bracket. You're scratching stuff off because your bracket's already ruined and you're putting it in the shredder after game number 5. But I love the first weekend. As you said, just all the endless hours of basketball from 12 p.m. to 12 a.m. basically on all these different channels. You're going back and forth. You're watching the scoreboards on the top of the screen, seeing what all the other teams are doing. You obviously have upsets happening when they have the chance to happen, the big upsets, which is always fun to kind of follow along. You see like a lower-seeded team off to a fast start, and you want to see if they can keep it going. So I'm going to start the first weekend, and I'm going to bench the Sweet 16 and the Elite 8. I agree with you. It is like the divisional round of the NFL playoffs. I think that's a good analogy, and that is where you see a lot of high-tier performances. You can see if that team that got through the first weekend with some upsets can continue it. I think that's always fun to follow as well. But I'm gonna bench that in favor of the first weekend. I think that's my favorite. So we're almost there, Matt. Just a couple more weeks, and we're almost there, which is nice to say.
We're gonna go right from March Madness right into the Masters. Actually, no, wait, sorry. We're gonna go right from March Madness into Major League Baseball, into the Masters, and then into more Major League Baseball, because there's a little gap this year. Usually it would go right into the NBA and NHL playoffs, but we got a little bit of a gap, and then eventually we get right into those. So we are approaching the biggest snowball of sports, right? You push a snowball down a hill, it's going to get bigger and bigger. You get all kinds of stuff. You're picking it up along the way. You mentioned the NWSL, Major League Soccer. Everyone's like WNBA is coming back. Everyone's playing pretty soon. So it's the snowball is going to start.
Well, absolutely. This as I said at the start. This is when Matt mentioned the light at the end of the tunnel, and I kind of built off of that. This is when you can start to kind of feel things just get better than they were. We made it through the tough, rough, late fall, and then all of winter. There's stuff to look forward to, so let's try to be happy about that. So that was episode 31. We are gonna do our MLB preview. I think we're gonna split it into just 2 episodes, previewing each league, the National League and the American League, and then our episode the week of opening day will give out our predictions and stuff for like certain things. And I don't know, we'll see. We'll play it by ear. We'll have some fun with it. But yeah, we want to thank you for listening to Best Available Podcast, episode 31, and we'll catch you guys again next week. Thank you for listening.